Hello, and welcome to Liturgical Shenanigans. This is our 6th episode, and in the spirit of Advent and Christmas and all of the traditions that many of our families get to experience this time of year, we thought we would sit around with some hot chocolate and share with you some traditions from our stories, and maybe see where we have things that are the same and where things are different. So join us as we jump into the conversation.
Christmas.
We always start with these like,
Well, what if we did? What if we start soberly today? Christmas is a time of joy and celebration and laughter.
I don't understand.
Why does you making weird echo commentary make it more sober?
So Merry Christmas.
Yes.
It's kind of a looser episode today because hopefully all of us will take a minute to share some things from it. And does anyone want to jump in with theirs?
They're what?
Their
Have you told them what we're doing?
Yeah, tell people what we're doing.
Yeah, so today we're going to be sharing a story from either our childhood Christmas traditions or ones that we've picked up along the way, or maybe even, down the road at a certain point when we have a certain kind of home or whatever. These are traditions that feel important to us. And maybe we can explore some of the what feels significant about it, whether it's spiritually or community-wise or whatever aspect feels significant. And that's kind of what I'm imagining we do.
And to paint the scene for you, we're sipping our hot chocolates in the light of Hannah and Jackson's Christmas things. Many tree and there's elves attached to lights. Wow.
Maddie is great with child, and the Christmas star.
I am very great with
above
child. Some of us are in Christmas onesies and sweating a lot already and regretting the decision.
There's stockings in random places around our living room. We always have Christmas lights around the edges of the room because we like gentle lighting. And so there's twinkle lights everywhere. And during Christmas, the only thing that changes is we hang ornaments from the twinkle light.
It's amazing. It looks so good. But yeah, if you want to put on a Christmas sweater and drink some hot cocoa with us, and why are you laughing at me?
Or your Christmas imbibement.
Yeah, whatever.
Of choice.
Or just
eggnog.
Seasonal acknowledgement in whatever way that looks like for you.
Kai and I got into a discussion. She asked me, what is the better Christmas drink, or your favorite Christmas drink, between hot chocolate and eggnog?
So Starbucks used to have an eggnog latte. Don't give me that look. But they used to have an eggnog latte. And I would wait with more, this is a big deal coming from me, king of the spooky season. I would wait with more anticipation for it than the pumpkin spice or any PSL. Fall drink. The eggnog latte was everything. And my dad, I grew up with my dad ordering it all the time, so I think that's why I became obsessed with it. And then my dad and I would every year we'd send the picture of the eggnog latte is out, I'm drinking it.
That's
they discontinued it.
No.
Oh, you can come to the coffee shop I work at. We're making eggnog latte.
I can't drink eggnog when you're great with child.
Well,
but
or
it's
coffee.
not real.
So neither of those are true.
You could get a decaf eggnog latte.
No, the issue isn't caffeine, it's the egg.
Yeah, but
Flax?
it's probably not actually
or nutmeg.
eggnog with
You
egg
can
in
use
it if they're
nutmeg to make
giving
fake
it.
egg?
We're all
No,
talking at
JK
the same
laws.
time. It's fine.
Okay.
I thought we were still talking about topping of eggnog.
No. You mix
Yeah.
up the flax to make fake egg to bake with.
Yeah.
Maybe that would make delicious eggnog.
Could be.
Hannah and I were having a
dog.
separate conversation over your conversation, so
It's
have fun with
gonna be
that,
good.
Jackson.
All
Okay,
of
so
this
anyway,
stuff
but-
is ritually based, though, is the kind of tie-in of all the things we just named, the living room, the different drinks that you have in the seasons, the various talks or relationships, how you got to having those drinks because of the relationship with your dad getting them. All these things are kind of all tied into the calendrical rite of this season, which is once a year. When we enter into this time of the year, we start pulling out all of this stuff.
It's the most wonderful
So many
time
traditions.
of the year.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question. do we want to go in like chronological tradition order? Like my tradition that I'm going to share is Christmas Eve.
Oh, mine
okay.
is too.
Mine's before.
Okay.
Mine's probably like certainly that evening and maybe after the day.
Oh, so mine's first.
Okay.
All right.
Amazing.
Yeah, and mine is one that I've reflected on a bit in the last couple of years in my program, thinking about, we had to do genograms, different genealogy, family systems sort of work. And one of the things we had to do was pick an item from our family that we remember. And I picked our Christmas tree. So a little bit of storytelling about that. The Christmas tree that we put up in our house is the Christmas tree that I had in childhood. There was probably one before it, but I don't remember that. It's an artificial tree, if you were not picking that up. Otherwise, a very old, dried out thing.
Needleless.
It's a serious fire hazard if it's not fake.
But so it's color coded. Each of the little arm hooks have the different colors in the rings, and so my memories setting that up. There was a loft storage area in the garage, and at some point, I think usually Dad would go up and set up the ladder in the garage. A car has to kind of pull out for that and bring it down. So there was a day that Christmas stuff came down, and we'd set up the tree, and it was me and my sister. Typically, there would be my dad had recorded cassette tapes of the local light rock station Christmas playlist. With the commercials and everything. So every year we had like 2 Christmas tapes, and it played the same songs in the same order with the same commercials from however many years ago, which is still like the Christmas playlist in my head. And I've put on my Spotify playlist has most of the same songs because that's Christmas. And we'd set up the tree, and a lot of times there'd be baking going on. Like Mom would be making something, and we'd be bouncing back and forth. And different folks would come in when it was time to put different ornaments, that sort of thing. Fast forward a bit. When Sonnet and I got married, our first Christmas married, my folks got a new tree, and so they passed us on that tree, and we were in an apartment. It was a great apartment. The spot where we put the tree must have had a slightly uneven floor or something, because the feet were kind of like this tripod where it goes straight down and then the feet stick out in 3 ways. And then, so we set it up, and that night I came home and it had fallen over and one of the feet had broken.
Oh no.
Yeah. So we like duct taped it up and rotated it. Because, it must be this way that's the problem, and another foot broke.
Oh no.
Like the
Oh,
next day.
gosh.
And so, we could have taken that as a maybe not. Maybe this tradition isn't going to carry over. Or we could do what I did, which was go to the local, this is in Cedarville, so tiny town, one hardware, well, 2, but 1 hardware store, and look for a solution. And what I found was a real tree stand and concrete. So, so we mixed up concrete, lined up the tree to be as level up and down as possible, poured the concrete in. And that's still our tree stand to this day. And we, the kiddos still put it together. In the last couple of years, we've recolored the arms and wrote together, which the first time in history, we never had a list of like what the order of colors was supposed to be. We'd sort them all and then figure out which the big one was every year. And one of my kiddos, I think it was Jay last year, was like, what if we wrote it down? And then it was just in the box. And I was like,
Brilliant.
well, that would be quicker, wouldn't it? Because we're always like, especially toward the top, it's like, is that? And then you put it in and be like, that looks wrong. Yeah. But one of the things I've noticed over the last few years, or parenthood, is that it's definitely not the same. A lot of times I'm pushing for it to happen. There's some struggle about where we're going to put it up. The kids may or may not be super engaged on the day that we're going to put it up. I'm the one who would bake if baking's happening. So like if I'm making the tree happen, I'm, it's this, it can feel like I'm trying to force something that it's like a broken tree that I'm trying to stick in concrete to make the stupid thing happen. And it's just something I've been reflecting on. I don't think we're changing and not doing the tree or something like that. but I just recognize in me that there's a piece of me that wants to bring forward the tradition from my childhood that felt like Christmas, and try to make it happen that way. Even though maybe I am the only one who knows what that was like and knows the feeling I'm trying to access with it.
Yeah. That's like a tricky thing with traditions is when do they, I don't want to say die. Maybe I do. when do we stop?
Yeah.
When have they done what they set out to do well, and how do we say, thank you for doing this for me, and now I'm going to create space for something new. But it is painful because you have that nostalgic emotional attachment to the experience and a fair longing to keep experiencing it again and again, like we do with joyful sensory memories.
I think death is right, because it's like grief. It's this thing that I know is only in memory.
Yeah.
Like, well, now I'm cheating and going ahead past Christmas Eve, but like breakfasts at my grandma's house with our whole family gathering, that's not a thing that is going to happen again.
Yeah.
And it's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird because we don't often practice an end. Because we don't really want it to end.
Right.
So when you discover that all of a sudden it's 5 years later and it's ended, you never got an end.
Yeah.
So you try to like kickstart it again and do it one more time, and it's just not the same. And so you try again next year, and you just keep spinning that wheel without the closure of actually having a stop.
Yeah, because you never get to say goodbye. Like when
Yeah.
you realize the thing is done after it's done, you don't get to go, oh, this is the last time it's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, and this actually may be jumping into my tradition, but I sometimes like when my parents got divorced, a lot of traditions forcibly died because it will never be the same again.
Right.
Yeah.
Christmas we'll never all be together, and even if we were all together, it won't ever be like it was. So
Jump into yours.
Yeah.
Oh.
Go for it.
yeah, so my family, mine is a Christmas Eve, and every Christmas Eve growing up, my dad's mom and dad would always be with us for Christmas Eve. We would go to church, and our church that we went to did like a full-on pageant. Had rehearsals for weeks, kind of pageant, was casted. There were auditions. It was I always wanted to be Mary. I never got to be Mary, but they always gave me solos because I had a really good singing voice. And looking back, I'm like, Maddie, Mary had no lines. She just sat there. Why was that not good enough for you? Anyways.
You're Mary this year.
Yes. Well, okay, anyways. But my dad's parents would come to watch the pageant, and then we would have Chinese food from the same Chinese restaurant every single Christmas Eve, from Golden Buddha. And I would always order the same thing. I was obsessed with plain white rice with soy sauce, and I also liked beef fried rice. That was it. Just a plate full of different kinds of rice. And it always felt like it was midnight by the time we went to bed. I'm sure that wasn't actually the case, but that's just what it felt like. And it was just something fun to look forward to every year. And it was so stress-free because I got to do the creative thing and be in the pageant. And then I got to have a meal that my mom didn't have to prepare. So there was no like hustling and bustling and yelling in the kitchen trying to get things ready. And then my parents got divorced. And that is that feeling of I never really got to say goodbye to it because I didn't know the last Christmas Eve together having Chinese food was going to be the last Christmas Eve. Now, the tradition itself didn't necessarily stop. Whoever had us for Christmas Eve, we continued to do Chinese food, and fast forwarding to my adult life, I've actually brought the Chinese food tradition to my in-laws. They have Chinese food now. Sad thing though was I was often not included in the Chinese food eating because I started working at a church. And at the church I worked at, the second church I worked at, on Christmas Eve, we had like 4 services for a while. It was such a long day. It was a whole day thing. So, and people brought us food. Like, the congregation was very caring of the staff and fed us well. I didn't get to have Chinese food with my family on Christmas Eve. My last year, I shared the Chinese food tradition, and I think it was the associate minister was like, why don't we just order Chinese food and have it as a staff? So then I brought it to them. But it was never the same. It was never the same as it was when I was little, and it was my core immediate family. My Nana has since died, so like I definitely don't have Chinese food with her. My grandpa's, currently sick, so I probably won't see him this Christmas Eve. So it's just, it's like a mourning of I want to be excited for the ways that people in my life now have embraced this tradition. It's really super fun. And now that I no longer serve at a church, COVID was actually really great for me because it was the first time in 4 years of marriage to my spouse that I got to be home Christmas Eve and eat Chinese food with him. Like, he got to have my tradition with his family every Christmas, but I was always at work. That was great. And so then again this year probably we'll get to have Chinese food, assuming I'm not giving birth. Could who knows? But yeah.
There'd be something awesome about that.
Giving birth and eating Chinese food.
Like Christmas Eve, and then baby comes on Christmas. And
yeah, that would be my life.
It's a Hallmark movie. Gone wrong.
My tradition is sort of like, so Maddie talked about, I'm just finding it so interesting that we all have like different aspects of like, what does it look like to either let the tradition go or have it change over time, or pass it on to different groups of people. And the thing that has happened in my family is growing up, I was always like the tradition police. Like, if we did it this way once or twice and I liked it, I was like, well, obviously we have to do it that way again. What are you doing? We didn't do it that way last year. We have to do it this way. And I was just absolutely that kid. So I will tell what my tradition is and then come back to that comment. So the way Christmas Eve goes in my family is always the same. Not all of it is planned. Some of it is. Usually there's a Christmas Eve service that one or multiple of us are involved in. We all go to that together. And then we get home. I have no idea what happens for the food. It's probably snacks and smorgasbord-ish things, something that doesn't need a lot of preparation, but is still at home because my family tends to be a kind of last-minute family. So, like, we've probably finished our Christmas shopping within a day or two before Christmas. So there's tons of wrapping left to do, and we, after food or even during food, every single Christmas Eve, we watch this movie called Time Bandits, which has literally nothing to do with Christmas, except for one line that acknowledges that one scene happens near Christmas. The word Christmas is uttered once in the movie, and that is all. But it was a thing that my older brother and my dad started doing, and it just never died. Like, we've tried to make it die multiple times and it won't. Like, someone, even if it's not me, will be like, well, are we watching Time Bandits this year? We have to watch Time Bandits.
I've never even heard of this movie.
I know. It's not a very well-known movie. Some other time I'll explain Time Bandits, or go look it up, because now is not the moment for me to talk about the movie because it'll take too long. It's very strange. But we always do that. Everyone starts out watching the movie. My mom will leave pretty quickly because she's the one who will wrap all of the presents. So she has to like run away and go actually finish getting ready for Christmas. And then my dad chronically falls asleep when we watch movies as a family, so he will often fall asleep pretty early in the movie because we watched it so many times. My younger brother doesn't always like large groups of people, so he will kind of peace out eventually. And my older brother he's the wild card. He will fall asleep. He will go wrap presents. He will go do other things that need preparation. And by the end of the movie, I am the only one left in the room because I am very stubborn and I'm the tradition keeper. We have to finish watching the movie. Otherwise, it doesn't count. So I usually end watching that movie alone. And some people will still be up, some people won't be. But at that point, there's much less happening in the house. And so I kind of, at least growing up, would sort of have the house to myself. And I started deciding, like, Christmas lights are my favorite. That's one of the reasons why they're around our living space. So I would go sit under the Christmas tree and listen to two very particular Sufjan Stevens Christmas songs. One of them is O Come, O Come, Emmanuel, and one of them is Holy, 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 which is not technically a Christmas song, but it is on one of his Christmas albums. So those two songs sound like twinkle lights to me. So I would listen to them while I was sitting under the tree with like all of the other lights off. And eventually I just started sleeping under the tree that night. And then my younger brother started sleeping under the tree with me. And then finally my older brother started sleeping under the tree with me. And now that we have in-laws married into the family, they have also taken their turn sleeping under the tree. And we were all getting old enough so that like sleeping on the floor really isn't comfortable anymore. And I tried to be like, you know, we don't have to do this year. I don't have to be the tradition police anymore. How about we all get like a good night's sleep before Christmas because Christmas Day is long. So how about we all go to bed? And my older brother, of all people, was like, what are you talking about? We have to sleep under the tree. And it kind of has just continued to be a thing where, like, I was no longer the one making sure that tradition happened. Someone else in my family was like, no, this is special. We have to keep doing it. Which is just really delightful. Like, something that started out as, like, a just me tradition, which, like, on its own was this really lovely and beautiful and holy moment on Christmas Eve. I had all these other people join me eventually, and that was a very different sort of beautiful. So, yes, I made it back to the tradition police. But passing on traditions, like it's not just my tradition anymore, it's someone else's tradition because they've sort of been inadvertently grafted into the being of the tradition.
Or it's become something that matters to them.
Yeah,
also.
exactly. Yeah.
It's fascinating that each of our stories have this beat where it is tried to carry on.
Yeah.
Where it's tried to hand down and navigating the difficulty of that. It's fascinating. Okay, so mine is normally the either the night of Christmas or the day after when I was little. So this was a while ago, but so years ago we would go to my grandparents' house on an evening after Christmas to do kind of the assembled family Christmas. My family did Christmas at home, and then we would go to my grandparents'. We'd have some version of a traditional meal followed, surrounded with all the things that you would invariably assume happens at a large family gathering around a traditional meal. And then we would go outside. And this is the portion that I would want to talk about. It was often after dark, always after dark by that point. And my family, my grandparents lived on this land in Wisconsin with a large hilled driveway that was gravel, but by this point in the winter, there was so much snow and ice on top of it, it was a perfect sledding hill. So the assembled family of like over 10, somewhere between 10 and 20 people, all took turns just flying down this hill on runner sleds and toboggan sleds. And there was, at the time, we were still using like cassette boom boxes, and we were kind of rotating through mostly like the ones that stand out to my head are like Jim Reeves and Muppets John Denver.
Yes.
Christmas was just blaring out into the starlit night of this kind of cold Wisconsin evening, all lit with these like kind of the old style street lights that my grandpa had put around the driveway. So like yellow kind of nostalgic street lights, at least in my memory of it. And invariably, someone would get hit. Air would get knocked out of someone. Like the
with the
toboggan
slide.
would run into
like
someone.
With the car?
No, someone would
Sled.
get knocked over. But it was all like part of it. And you like dug through these huge mounds of snow, and it was just all this like, especially after having celebrated Christmas and kind of eaten together and gotten in fights together, to go outside and like have this sort of interaction with creation and with each other in creation, even though I wouldn't have been able to articulate it that way at the time, was such an important part of the event. It was oftentimes, or almost always, this was an essential part of the evening. And that's kind of been carried on in some ways. We don't have as big a hill at my home, but whenever we're home for Christmas, we have kind of runner sleds, and oftentimes after the meal we'll go out at nighttime with kind of lit with lights and Christmas lights and music playing from inside the house. And sled down and get to be out in creation as we celebrate the Christmas tradition.
I think that's beautiful. I think your comment when you were like talking about the yellowed lights and you said, at least in my memory, this is how I experienced it, is so interesting because when we're little, everything is so magical. And now I'm like, man, have I ever actually asked my parents how they experienced the Christmas Eve tradition?
Sure.
I made a comment. It wasn't stressful for my mom. I bet you that's not true. I bet you that's not true.
Sure, yeah.
And I wonder as we get older if part of the reason why these traditions, we don't want to let go of them because we don't want to let go of that feeling of like safety and stress-free and joy. But you become responsible for them. So then you're seeing the darker undertones or whatever of the tradition itself. And you're like, oh no, is this dying? And is it more that I don't know that it's really dying. It's more like you're getting a different taste of the same thing that's always been. You just play a different role in it now.
Yeah,
and that
exactly.
is painful.
Absolutely. Because someone has to create those things and like host those spaces, and someone has to go get the boombox, and someone has to take the tree down from the attic, and someone has to
parents
go wrap the
stressing.
presents.
Yeah.
So like my mom could never be there because she had to wrap the presents, and not because she didn't want to, but like somebody had to do that. So to know that, like Maddie, you said like the sort of the underbelly of the traditions, like someone has to be responsible for the traditions. And like, I feel like when you're little, you get the gift of receiving the traditions, but like when you like you shift into this role of like, oh, it's my job now. I don't just get to receive them. I have to give them. And there's a lot of work that goes into that.
Particularly when it literally becomes your job.
Right.
So if you work
Yeah.
at a church in any capacity, it is the most stressful time of the year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There are so many commitments. You don't get to be with your family on Christmas Eve. And then if Christmas is on a Sunday, that's like a whole other mess in the morning.
That's this year too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And
I saw
I'm
one
like,
church-
I
yeah.
avoided that
To all of
perfectly.
our church friends,
Yes.
we love you.
Blessings
Yeah.
to you that day.
Yeah, but it also makes me go like, man, how I have so many mixed feelings about the expectation of that.
Yeah.
Because on one hand, if we want to do what is the Christmas season really about? If the reason church happens on Christmas Eve is because we've decided it's really about celebration of birth of Christ, then sure, there's a responsibility for your church leaders to be there and to create space for that. But I actually really think like we live in a world where Christmas has become about being together and and whatever celebration-y thing that means for you. So not that it's not about the birth of Jesus, but also historically it didn't start out that way anyways. Look it up. Look up how the church got connected to Christmas. You'll be shooketh. But I don't know. Is there a world in which we relieve who puts the expectation on the church leaders? And is there a world in which we relieve them of that duty at some point so that we get, I don't know. Does anything I just said make any sense?
Yeah, I was actually really excited about the church where I serve there. I just heard myself say the church where I serve, and I'm sitting with that for a second. The church where I am right now is recording the service earlier in the week, and then it'll be more of like a broadcast thing for Christmas. And I think that's pretty lovely, actually, to give ministry staff their space to do their families' traditions on Christmas.
Yeah, I saw I was looking up a church that I was invited to do pulpit supply at, but the timing didn't work out. But what they're doing for Christmas is like, we will not have communal worship that day. Please celebrate the birth of Christ with your families or with the people you choose to be with that
For
day.
that Sunday, you mean?
Yeah, for that Sunday.
Yeah. And I think that is more acceptable than if you were like, Christmas Eve, we're not doing anything. Mm-hmm. And I think part of that is it's become part of other people's tradition to attend the service. Yeah. So if we were like, hey, pastors, you get to be home with your family on Christmas Eve and eat your Chinese food, whatever, with them instead of be crying in your office because everybody's eating without you, or force your family to come to the church in between services, whatever. People would be devastated because you just took a tradition away from them.
Right.
So it is so tricky.
Well,
because you just described the parents-children thing again. Like in some ways, you're stepping into that role as the parent who is committing resources of their time and energy and enjoyment to make a ritual for the broader people to experience.
But I have nightmares over the Christmas season now.
Yeah.
I have actual stress dreams because I feel like, especially, I don't know, once you graduate from school, do you still have nightmares where you wake up and go, I didn't turn in that assignment
All the time.
Right. It feels similar for me right now, where I'm like, oh, I didn't plan the 9 p.m. service. I don't need to plan the 9 p.m. service. What are you doing? Why are you freaking out? It's just sad. But
this is really interesting because I'm the daughter of a worship leader, and part of our Christmas Eve tradition is also being involved in the services, but the entire family was involved in the service.
Yeah.
It wasn't just my dad who went away and did his own thing. It was, no, we're going to find something for you to do, and you can sing. How about you do this? And my dad particularly loves to invite a variety of ages of voices to read scripture passages and to share stories during worship. And so even when we were little, it's here now, your voice belongs in this service too, in not a pageant way where we have to prep for weeks and weeks, but you're part of telling and holding this story too. And so Christmas Eve service, even as someone who grew up participating in that almost every year, the participating is a really beautiful part of the tradition for me too. But I also think Maddie, you described one of the churches you served in as so many services that evening, which sounds really overwhelming to me because my church only had one service and it was early, so that it was just dark enough to make the candlelight feel the way it needed to. But then everybody was done, and it was please get out of the church, go be with your families. Which, I felt growing up was a nice way to sort of hold the tension of gathering communally and also saying, okay, you're done, church leaders, please go home and do your Christmas Eve thing. Which still doesn't, someone still has to collect the candles and put them away and all of those things. So it's not a perfect system, but I don't know. I just wanted to add my experience of those evenings too. So
And I feel similarly in
Yeah.
some ways. Like Christmas Eve always felt like tech week for me.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's miserable. You're exhausted. It's also wonderful because you're part of this thing that you spent
Yeah.
so much time putting together, making requests of children to be readers, giving the children opportunities to practice reading their scripture, and creating multiple kinds of spaces for multiple kinds of people to engage well in ways that they
Yeah.
needed. There is something beautiful about that.
Yeah.
And it's every year.
Yeah. Yep.
So
And I don't know that I have a lot to say about this, but everything we've been saying about Christmas Eve and ministry expectations and such brings up in me the old like numbers game and the phrases that you'd hear around church leader meetings that are like, the two most attended days of the year are Christmas and Easter, and so we better do. I don't know why I put an accent on it, but we
better do.
we better do whatever we can to make sure we can. I've got judgy words in there like that. We
Yeah.
can hook them. We can.
Yep.
And
And donors are very giving over
Yeah.
the holiday season. So there's an added
and there's
pressure.
and there's also I don't want to leave out, there's benevolence in that, right? Like we want to create space for people to join this community. We believe that can be a healing and loving space for them. So yes. And it adds really this pressure aspect
consumer.
the consumery aspect, as opposed to, like, I'm trying to imagine if I was doing that at home. We're talking about being the space maker for these different traditions at home with our families. And if there was that pressure on us there, like, oh, Hannah's bringing her boyfriend over this year. We really better do it up good because we want him to stay for the family, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
It's boyfriends come the most on 2 times a year, and it's for Easter dinner and Christmas Eve, you know?
Easter dinner.
I don't know. Easter and Christmas, I'll try to make it work.
Okay.
But it's just there's a weird pressure that at least for me in my ministry leading role competed with my ability to be which is true of church service leadership in general. I think competed with my ability to be present, which is a part of leading presence.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
This is so gonna sound so cheesy. It's like a sacrifice of the call, though. Like you to be a leader, it means you are going to be absent from some of the tomfoolery. I don't know. The getting to be part of also the community. Like we talked about this last week with when you choose to disclose a part of your story.
Right.
When you're a leader, there's a much bigger responsibility of what disclosing that looks like.
Right.
Same thing with the way you get to engage in traditions and celebrations. When you are the person that is supposed to, called to, paid to, whatever, create the space for celebration to occur, it does change how you get to engage it. There is grief in that. It is what it is. I don't know.
And privilege in a different way. Like,
Yes, absolutely.
Like those little tiny communion cups, someone comes in and fills them with this
Yes.
really funky tool
Yes.
every day, and they're the ones who know how that juice got in there. And
And
everyone
I don't
else
know how
might
to do that.
Not even think about how these tiny little cups got juice in them.
Absolutely.
Poured from a foot above somehow.
Where'd the bread come from? Somebody knows.
Somebody knows.
Somebody knows. Where did it go?
And if you're in a good community, you are being so well loved through
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
leadership position.
Yeah.
People are bestowing you with gifts and words of encouragement and gratitude. Again, if you're in a good community.
Yeah, and hopefully sharing some of the work too.
Absolutely.
Well, that brings me back to the family stuff that we're talking about, and what you said about I wonder what it was like for my mom.
Yeah.
And I want to, if you ask her, or if you're listening, or Dad, if you're listening,
Yo,
let us know
Dean.
what Chinese Christmas Eve was like for you, because
Yeah, it was your parents that were there.
well, and I imagine that to some degree, my parents doing this magical Christmas tree thing. Now they didn't have an artificial tree or something like that, but they were doing a version of what felt Christmassy to them. And since then, with my kiddos, they're like, when are we doing this thing? Which is like accidental stuff that has kind of gotten added in, but now has become Christmas.
the
Or
thing,
like,
yeah.
you know, are we doing are we making the cinnamon rolls, for when Maddie and friends come over?
You're not making them for me. I can tell you exactly who you're making those cinnamon rolls for.
I know. But the kids are excited about, right? There's these things that have become their Christmas. And I'm like, are those going to be things they try to foist onto the next stage of their people? So, yeah.
Yeah, my kid will come with me. Yeah. Hopefully by next year. If not this year.
For cinnamon rolls.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
As we have to wrap this up, if y'all will give me permission to do this, I'd really love to end this with a thank you to the people who help us create these traditions and hold these traditions and do the work of holding this space so that others can participate, which sometimes means that you don't get to participate the way perhaps you once got to. We are so thankful to anyone who's listening who resonates with that sense of loss that we've been talking about. But maybe it hasn't been lost for you. Maybe that's a role that you thrive in and love. And however you feel about the hosting space that you hold, we want to say thank you.
Which makes me think about Santa Claus.
Okay, we're done.
No, wait. No, because it's the same thing, right? Like you get to experience it one way
it's enough.
For those of you who are interested in a heated discussion on Santa and other Christmas traditions, we're going to have a bit of an after show that you can listen to on Patreon. So join us over there if you would like to hear more about that.
And hey, to further shout out our Patreon, if you haven't gone to the actual website yet, here's what that means. For $5 a month, you can listen to heated debates about Santa Claus. or for those of you who have asked me, why do you have an explicit rating? What just happened? I just had a glitch
rating?
in The Sims. For those of you who have been like, why do you have an explicit rating? I haven't heard a single swear word. You will for $5.
Oh, jeez. Wait. Let's...
But
if you become a patron, you can have access to additional content for this podcast that we create. So come join us on Patreon.
Yeah, and support us in the other artistic liturgies that we want to engage in and be passing on to others in the community.
Yeah, we're excited in the new year to start dreaming about what more we can offer you. And we're so thankful for the ways you stood with us in our first season of Liturgical Shenanigans.
Yeah. Happy holiday season to you all. We're basically not taking a break, so we'll be coming back in January with more Liturgical Shenanigans.
Woo.
In the meantime,
tradition well in this season.
Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays,
And New Year, and all the things.
and to all a good night.
We love you. Bye.